Yep.
All right. Well, let me get rid of the war spine here, and we're going to come back to that. Okay. So let's run you through the whole process as we go through it. So step one is to look at a sheet of wood. This one, hold it up. I'll take a look at it, and I see there's a little defect up here. If I'm cutting to 22 inches, this is a 24 by 24 sheet. It'd probably be okay. This one, this side has a little tear in it. You know what? I'm not going to mess with this one. Let's go to a different one. We're going to do two here. Look at these two. And the first one, this one looks pretty clean. Got a little hiccup down there. That's just the grain in the wood. Back looks clean. So, sheet 3 of the Titanic is 12 by 22 inches, I believe. So the critical thing for me to do is to get it 12 inches wide. And that's 12 inches. Roller cutter. This one is a fraction less than 12. I'll put it over here. This is a good one. This represents 9. We'll put it in that bin.
And you're cutting down for sheet 3, right?
I'm cutting down for sheet 3, which is 12 inches wide, and I think 22 inches long. When I look at this, there's something a little funky going on there, so I'll take the other half. Pick this half, that looks good.
You got one down there, too.
Where? That's just a little grain thing. That's okay, that'll be covered up by the ink. I'm more concerned about texture at this point than I am color, because when I lay down the ink, it's going to cover up, you know, the color things.
Now, you were talking about those splits on the end. You've already cut those off then?
No, this one didn't have it.
Oh.
So this sheet of wood, kind of interesting. It's the backing didn't go all the way to the end, so you can see how the wood just splits really, really easy. You can see the backing ends right there. So since it's not going to be a full 24 inches, that's okay. This will be trimmed off, and the modeler will never see that. So it's just what I do is I take a look at each sheet of wood, figure out what pieces I can get out of it, where I can position them to not bring defects across. So I now have in this bin 10 sheets of wood. And in this weather, they tend to curl up a little bit, as you can see. They just want to roll up. And people say, does it damage your decks when you keep them rolled up? And I go, hey, they want to roll up all by themselves. It doesn't, I don't force them. It's what they want to do. So,
and let's, while we were talking about rolling them up, if you guys get into an issue where it's a little bit too curled for your own taste, iron them. Steam iron.
But dry heat on the iron. So no steam. Turn the steam off.
Oh, I thought you said steam them.
No steam. And then, so now, if you see the way that this curls, I ran it through the printer like this, the print head is going to catch these edges and trip and smear and be all nasty. So I want it to curl the other way. So I do one of these jobs on it. And yes, I do this for every sheet, for every Titanic before I feed it in the printer. Because this piece of wood right here is $4. And if the print head catches on it, that's like taking $4 bills and lighting them on fire. When you're doing 100 Titanics and you start burning up all these dollar bills, yeah, you take the extra 15 seconds and you make sure that it curls the right way so it doesn't gum up in the printer. So now, if you look at it, you can see that it's actually curling more flat. So that's not curled up at all. Again, compare that to this one.
Right.
Pretty dramatic difference. So these are 10, and just like they do on the cooking shows, they're going to say, well, we have these already prepped over here. Let's move over, and we're going to go to the printer. So the printer is controlled by the computer here. And this is the pattern, for those of you familiar with the boat deck. This is it. To give you an idea, when I'm editing the boat deck, this is typically the scale that I work in. I work in a 1500% magnification. And so when I'm doing all my little planks and my rounded corners and adjustments, this is the level that I work in. Now, I do this, and the printer doesn't quite exactly register with the laser cuts. So if I turn on the laser cut layer right now, this is going to look a little funky. You're going to say, well, that doesn't line up at all. It's because I had to stretch this to make it fit. So at this end, you can see that this line right here is pretty much going right through the middle of this this shape. And if you wonder why some lines are red and some lines are blue, I always cut the red first, because they're little blow-away fallout pieces. The blues are more significant outer perimeters where the wood can tend to curl up more, so I do them last so the wood doesn't curl while it's cutting. So now you can see this one is roughly centered. These are roughly centered for what we're going for. By the time I get down to the end, it's like I'm missing the target completely.
Right.
And because if you look at the end, let me turn on the alignment layer.
So this just isn't some old guy with an X-Acto blade sitting in the mountains of California drinking beer doing it.
No, this is pretty high-tech stuff. And again, I've been involved in computer graphics since the 1970s. So I've been around. I've been doing it for a while. So this is actually the pattern for the laser, or for the laser cutter. When it's supposed to be doing this mark at exactly 21 3/4 inches. And so it'll do it at 21 3/4 inches. I found that when the paper, the wood, came out of the printer, it was about 1/8 of an inch short. And it was not going all the way to the alignment because the scaling on the printer is just slightly different. So after I get everything worked out and all the details worked out and everything all lined up perfectly, then I have to take the print pattern for the wood and go and stretch it over just that tiny amount, because even though I'm telling it to print, in this case, 21 3/4, 7/8, that's 21 13/16. Is that what that is? Something like that? I think that's what it is. When I tell it to go 21 13/16, it's actually going to come in at 21 3/4, and then will be exactly the way we want it to be, and you'll see that once it prints. So now, I have all these layers, in case you want to see them. I'll give you the breakdown of the plan. So what we have is the alignment, or the yellow corner marks to help me place the sheet of wood border and labeling. We can turn that off. See, that's all that stuff. We'll put that back on. The deck markings are typically the little gray dots for where the benches go. The labeling, the laser cut are the blue and red lines.
And the markings where the benches goes is what now?
Yes, they're little gray dots. Let me show you here. We'll go to right there. That's where the bench would go. There's another bench that's going to go right there.
Keep note of that, everybody. I didn't know that until now.
So they actually have little tiny dents in the kit in the plastic deck, but I don't want to drill holes in the wood deck to indicate where the dents are. So I put those little tiny subtle gray dots. We have that. And interesting too, here's the alignment mark. You can see how far off the alignment mark is here to the right. But again, this is all going to line up once we get that done. So you can see the yellow target totally misses on this extreme edge, but you'll see it all works out in the end. So going back to the layers.
Remind me to get photos of those gray dots before we leave,
okay,
so I can do a resource post on that.
Sure. And so other layers, okay, here we go. So now it gets good. The margin are all the margin planks. So if I turn them off, you get that. And interesting, you can see this is where I've done what I call the normalization of the boards, right? And so this is where I've stretched certain boards or made them longer so everything works out right. I hide that under the margin planks. You never see that. You're getting to see behind the curtains here, so that's pretty revealing stuff. Then the plank lines, if you look really close at the planks, you'll notice that the longitudinal lines separating the planks are actually darker than the butt cuts. And the reason for that is they tended to cast shadows because these edges of the boards were rounded, so they caught a little bit of light. When they did butt splices, 2 boards end to end, it was just 2 boards pressing. And so the butt splices are really light, really subtle. When you print this, you can barely see them. They're much more dramatic here. So again, there's the margins. Let's see what else do we have in this plan. Then past that, okay. There's all the plank lines, and then these are all the different colored planks. If you want to know how many different colors of wood there are on here, the answer is there are 10. Plank 0 through plank 9, and if I pick one at random and turn them off, okay, we're going to turn off plank 4. Let's see what this does to the pattern. Wow. Oof, those are all the plank 4s. So if you want to see where those are distributed,
that's a lot of wood.
They are pretty randomly distributed throughout the whole deck of the ship.
And what if a woodchuck chucked that wood?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll put all the plank 4s back. So we go back to layers, layers. And this is when I was adjusting the tints, trying to get the yellow pine right. I would say, you know, it's a little too green, and I would find the greenest plank to make it a little less green. And it's a little too dark, so I'd find the darker planks and make them a little lighter. It's too contrasty, so it kind of worked that magic in between. So turn plank 4 back on, apply it, there we go. So again, this is the Print Master. This is what I worked on, and all those hours upon hours upon hours of getting not only the laser cuts, but all the individual planks and the margins and the waterways. Here's a good example of the nibbing that we were talking about earlier. So you would see this would be a curve that would go along, but they cut off the ends of all these boards. Then this is actually a custom polygon shape. And if I go in here just to see it, so these are all the points, and I can look at this and go, oh, you know what, that one's a little bit off. This has to be off by at least 1/1000th of an inch. So I'm going to straighten that up. Nope, don't want to do it. Let me see. So you can say I put it there. That's not right. I better put it right here. So right there. Oh, that's not right. It's got some other sort of reference point that it's trying to go to. That may be better, may not be better. I don't know. Again, when you look at this the whole time, that's a very, very subtle little detail. But that's the work that we did for all these nibbing pieces all the way around. You can see it there and all the way back. And
there's rivet counters, and then there's nail counters.
Yeah, and I'm definitely a plank counter. Right? You got to make sure the planks are right, because that's what you people are paying for, and I do my best to get them there. So now, if we look at this is what's visible on the screen. Everything's visible. You can see it all. When it comes time to print the wood, I am not going to print the alignment marks, those yellow marks of this yellow dot. That's just going to, yellow circle is going to confuse everything. I'm not going to print the labeling. That's my instruction labeling, and I'm not going to print the laser cut lines. So if I say OK and I do File Print, it shows me the pattern, and now this is exactly what's going to go to the pattern. You can see the little gray marks for the benches, but you can see there are no red and blue laser cut lines.
Right.
So that is not going to print. So that's going to my Canon Pro 100 series. It's going for a 12 by 24 inch sheet of paper. I take a look at it. I zoom out. I should have this much leftover wood at the end. It's going the full width. It's not doing a page break or anything stupid, so we're good. So I print one, and we'll do the first test print, and here we go.
And how long does it take for the first one? For a sheet?
You're about to see it. I'll answer that question by a demonstration. So, there are 10 sheets of wood in the printer right now. And here comes the first one. The printer is warming up and loading its ink tanks and doing all that. There it goes. Once that peaks off the bottom of the printer, I make sure that the margins are right, left and right. Then I'll tell it to print the next 9, and then we'll move on to the next step.
Is that when you check it over on the table? When you lay it on your previous laser cut?
I will. That's for an alignment step. So now I look at it. I want to make sure that everything's right, that it's centered between the pieces of wood. The printer knows what it's printing on. It knows that it's got the margins. It's lining up nicely on the piece of wood. That's good. So now I tell it to print 9 more.
You know, without these even being laser cut, these would be worth framing. They look nice.
They're pretty amazing. Okay, so now 9 more are on the way. That printer's going to crank out 10 of them. And so while that's happening, now let's get the laser cutter started. So if we go over to the laser cutter, let's take a trip over here and see what it looks like.
How long do you have to wait for that to put the coating on it?
I do not coat them.
Okay.
They're pre-coated for inkjet printing, and I send them out natural wood. I let the modeler, if they want to do something with it, to sand it, to make the color subtle, or chalk it, or pastel it, I don't put any sort of coating on it.
Okay. I misunderstood that. I thought you coated them after they print.
Oh no, it's before the ink goes down. So I get it from the mill with the coating on it. So there we go. So let's go over here. In fact,
wow.
I think I can show you.
Look at this, guys. That wasn't even, what, 4 minutes, 3 minutes?
Yeah, it's pretty quick. So here's some other ones. I had an error at the mill where they did not properly inkjet seal all the way to the edge. So if you want to get a close-up, this is what happens without the inkjet coating.
Oh.
So you see the ink feathers and runs, and it's pretty disastrous. So look at the clarity of the plank lines here. That's pretty sharp. And then when you get over here, just a disaster.
Yeah,
so when the guys at the mill were spraying them, they weren't going so accurately to the absolute end and edge of the wood. So they were leaving little areas, and I have no way of knowing that when I start manufacturing them. It's just I print and it gets to the very end of the sheet and it goes splat, and I just go, oh, doggone it. That's $4 down the toilet. But I talked to the mill and I showed them all the pictures. That's what these were for. This is evidence, and they gave me a break. So here we go. The first one's done. The second one's coming out. This is how fast they come off the printer. This is a new Canon Pro 1000 image graphics printer. It's made for doing commercial photography, wedding photography, big beautiful portraits, but it actually prints wood planking pretty good too. So here we go. All right, over here to the laser cutter. Right now inside I just have a big piece of cardstock, and this is what I'm going to be laying the wood patterns on, but I need an alignment pattern. So I'm going to go back over here to the computer and get that cutter to do its thing. So if I go back here, I connect to it through a browser, and this is the cut plan for the Titanic. So before we were looking at the plank pattern without the cut, this is the cut without the planks. And so this isolates off to the laser cutter, and you can see my 3 sheets. Sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3. I'll turn off sheet 2 first, so I'm going to toggle the visibility on that. And we're left with this. If you want to see what sheet 1 looks like, that's the most distinctive shapes. I can turn off sheet 3. There we go. And so this is the box fit cut, and this is the high detail cut. We're going to turn off sheet 1, and we're going to turn on sheet 3, because that's what we're going to be cutting. So this is the pattern that we're going to cut. That should be recognizable as the boat deck for those of you that are following along. And to cut through this thin sheet of wood, I run the cutter at about 40% power, which is fine. Those yellow alignment marks, remember I showed you those, and there's this little circle right here. That's going to help me line up the wood and make sure that I get it right. Those, I'm going to run those at 100% power and make 2 passes on them. And what that's going to do is it's going to make sure it really gets through that much thicker cardstock. So the order that it's going to go is it's going to start by cutting all the red shapes. Again, those are little detail holes that aren't going to violate the integrity of the cardstock at all. Then it'll do all the blue, and that's longer cuts that can make the cardstock separate a little bit and shift around. That's why we do all the red first. And then the last thing it's going to cut, the yellow corner marks and those 2 little alignment circles. Let's fire this off. And it looks like that's right. So I'm going to say run job. It loads it. It tells me that will take 5 minutes and 49 seconds.
And we've already got another 3.
Yep. So, and we're going. Now we can take a look over here.
And how many times do you use your alignment for each sheet?
A lot.
Burn?
A lot. Yeah, so right now I'm planning on doing a run of 20. I will probably use this sheet of cardstock for all 20. Now if, actually I do 2 of them, and we'll show that in a minute of why I do that. But typically I can easily get 10, 15, 20 out of a card. If the laser goes weird, if it loses something, if it has a hiccup, it'll screw up the pattern, and I may have to go back and cut a new one, but that's more the exception than the rule. Usually the cardstock runs are good for the entire run.
But you've done this so many times, you know what to look for if it's a nuisance.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it's usually pretty dramatic. So if some weird things can happen, particularly not so much on this cutter. This is a much better cutter than the little Muse that I have next door. It's got much better tolerances, less prone to error. That's what the last 2 of my Emden Dresden. To give you an example of the engineering on this is, I'm going to unlock the head here. And so this is the gantry. This is the way that a laser cutter works. is the head moves left to right, the gantry moves front to back. That glass tube in the back is the actual laser. That's it. And it doesn't move, it just fires its laser beam into that mirror, which hits this mirror, which hits this mirror, which directs it down into the material that it's cutting.
Wow.
So, to say this works with all smoke and mirrors is absolutely what it does. It just moves the mirrors around to put the cut where you want it to go. But one thing about this design, if you look at it, it's got this rail that's up here, and these lights were an add-in feature for this model cutter, which is really nice when looking at the workspace. But they're, believe it or not, they're just held in by a hot glue gun. They just use a hot glue gun. It's not screwed in or bolted or clipped, it's just hot glue. Well, it's hot in here right now, and the other day, one of the lights dropped out a little bit. It came down, and when it came down, it caught the top of the gantry, and it was jamming it, and so it couldn't move. And so the laser cutter was just going back and forth, and the gantry wasn't moving, and so it was cutting this huge, deep burn mark. So then, what do? You pop this off, you take it in, you reattach the lights, you get it so it all clears, you get it so it works, and away you go. But just little mechanical things like that. You know, after a while you learn it's all part of the process.
So is this one a mirror laser too, or is it a direct?
Same thing. In this case, if you look over here, the laser actually starts in this extension box and goes all the way across the back and ends about here. So that is a 40 watt laser or a 45 watt. I have the more powerful one, a 45 watt laser. This is a 90 watt laser. And the reason that this laser is so much more powerful is because the head moves faster. If the head moves faster, it spends less time over the material, therefore you need more power to ablate the material to go through. So I was surprised that as is twice as powerful of a laser, and I started running it at half the cutting power as the one over there, because hey, the laser's twice as powerful, but the head moves twice as fast. So I run both these machines at about 35 to 40% to cut through the material. So now it's on the blue lines, the way it goes. So that one is set and ready to go. I have another tray exactly like it right here. I haven't taped the tape to the front yet because these trays tend to flex a little bit side to side. And one of the biggest things that I was working on working the Titanic is finding a way to get these trays so they absolutely locked in place. So I ended up putting these wood brackets on them to give them a little more width to the side so they just fit snugly in the cutter frame. And then the other thing that I did, we can see it when I take that one out, is I put in these little bumpers like we have up here. And I added those front and back, so it keeps the tray one position front to back, and then the wood keeps it tight side to side, and it should go in pretty much exactly the same position.
I was going to ask you how you did the register from machine to machine.
Yeah, and that was tough. That took me a long time to get that system right. Believe it or not, this little Muse cutter, I use but basically the bumpers that I use on there are the little rubber bumpers that go on the underside of toilet seats. The little self-adhesive ones. They're perfect for locking the tray in. So right now this is down to 16 seconds. Now it's cutting the corner marks. There's that circle target. Next corner over there, corner in the upper right, up circle, now the corner in the upper right, and it's done. Okay, so I'm going to...
I see those bumpers.
There they are. So those bumpers keep it from going front to back, and then the wood fits exactly in between these two rails here to keep it from going side to side. So we'll see that as we put the next one in. So here's a blank one. Goes in like so. I press it down, nowhere for it to go. So now I've got my alignment done. I tape this down. That looks good. Close the lid. I tell it to repeat the last job. And it's going to do the exact thing all over again. So now we go over to the printer. Let's see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6s within seconds of being done. So you can see that printing is not what takes all the time. I go over here to my other rolling cutter. And we're just going to take the little tail off. So 1, 2, 3. So typically, again, when I'm not narrating, this is getting in the way, there's my little guide mark for width, so let me take that out. I'm doing a whole bunch of things at once when I'm producing. I've got the big cutter going, you can hear it whirring away in the background, doing its thing. I got the printer going, I'm telling it to print more, I'm cutting the wood on the other roller cutter down there to get it 12 inches wide. I'm decurling, I'm putting a new stock in the printer to make sure that's going up. I got an out of ink alert, I got to replace an ink cartridge, it's always something where you're running around. So now I can take these 5 and we'll put them right here. So the next step of the process is to do the alignment. So this is the cardstock that I just cut. And if you look at it, it's got a pattern. So if you come in from the top, you can see a little better. I think that's maximum bright. Let me make sure. Yeah, that's as bright as it's going to get. So I now take the pattern, and I do keep it dark because I have to see these lines. And I take this circle, and I line up this circle, and I line up that circle. And if those are absolutely centered, then I can see where all the lines are going to go in the wood. Yeah, you can see that pretty good on your camera. So that's going to show me where all the cuts are going to go in this wood. And so right now I know that my print pattern is lining up. I just got to do a couple of things to prep this sheet before I go. So I'm going to take this off for just a minute. And then I do this. So if I'm going to use this 20 times, if I'm using Scotch tape to stick it down, every time I pull up the Scotch tape, it's going to tear the top layer of the paper off. So to solve that, take a big run of Scotch tape, and I create a nice little no-stick buffer here. Smooth that down. I'll do another one up here at the top. And then as I'm mounting the decks, I like keeping the tape right here in the lower right-hand corner, so I'm going to do a little no-stick zone here. And if you're wondering, boy, I bet that guy goes through a lot of tape. The answer is yes.
Oh, and I noticed your blue tape down there too, Jim.
Yeah, and I have many tapes because it's all a matter of economics here, right? So the cardstock is like about 20 cents a sheet. Then the wood, $8 a sheet. You don't mess around. Scotch tape, 80 cents for a roll of 1,000 feet. Yeah, I'll use a lot of Scotch tape to save things. So. And then, of course, there's time, right? And time is probably the most valuable commodity. Since I have so little of it, I really don't like making mistakes. So
well, that and multitasking different stages and just keep walking it through.
Right. So now, circle number 1, circle number 2, and then, just to make sure it's right, I'm looking at this line on this end to make sure I'm cutting right through the middle, right there. I am. I look at this line over here, I'm in the margin there, that's pretty close. If I get within a plank width, I consider myself a happy guy. And so, that is looking right about where I want it to be.
Nail cutters, you didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Nail counters, you didn't hear that.
So, again, basically, while that one's cutting, I've got 6 minutes to get this exactly right. And I can use it all if I have to. And I'm not delaying anything because I can't do anything with this until that one's done. So using my left hand to hold it down, I start securing it with the tape. At this point it shouldn't move around too much, so I can take my hand off and start going here. I try to put just a little bit of tension in the wood, so now before I put this piece of tape down, I'm actually pulling this corner diagonally opposite just to get a little bit of tension in, and I'll push this one up and over before I put the tape on it. Again, try to keep that as tight as I can get it on that sheet of wood. That's now down to 51 seconds. More wood that I can cut the tail off of.
Guys, now you can see why this man doesn't get on Facebook very much.
Yeah. So when I do production, and if I can do 20 or 30 of these, you know, people go, well, while you're waiting for the cutter, why aren't you, you know, you got time to yak on Facebook. Sometimes I do if all the background stuff is done, and that's when I'll get on Facebook and post stuff. But man, when I'm in a production run trying to get things done, whew, I'm a busy guy. So now, countdown tells me 17 seconds. I'll wait. I get to relax.
Downtime.
And then, cutting the little corners. Out. Out with the old. In with the new. I only have to do one change now.
One question before you close that.
Yeah.
Being that this is the first one, you will know by looking at it, since you've done so many already, whether or not you need to adjust anything.
There shouldn't be anything adjusting. If it comes out hideously wrong, then yeah. Okay. So let me show you one thing that I always do. In between each one, I hit this button, which is home laser, which tells the laser to go back to where it knows is its distinct home. If it hits an edge, it, you know, it catches a little scrap piece of paper that jams up the wheel. If you know anything about navigation, it uses a technique called dead reckoning. It says, I'm at 0, 0, because I moved 10 inches over, so I'm 10 inches over. Now, if I move 2 to the right, I'm 8 inches over. If I move 2 down, I'm 8 inches over and 2 down. So it tracks all of its movements and adds them all up. If something screws up a movement, it's not where it thinks it is, and then everything else gets off alignment.
Some of the Heidelberg mini 4-color presses that printed 1117 day in and day out, if you didn't go back to home after doing a run and you hung another plate, it was completely lost.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So it's just a habit I got into. So now, that was set to cut cardstock. So now to change it to cut wood, oh, my printer, you're lucky, we have to replace an ink cartridge. That'll be exciting. But before we do that, let's go here. Now remember, I'm cutting the red, I'm cutting the blue, and I'm doing 2 passes, super intense burn of the alignment marks. I don't need to cut the alignment marks because I'm cutting the finished product work, and I don't want to put holes in that. So now I just turn off the yellow, and now for the next 20 jobs, I'll just repeat that. And so start that running, the cutter goes, the printer says it's out of ink, so let's do the ink.
So how much, taking that one step out, how much does that take off the time?
8 seconds.
Oh.
That's not the point. The main reason that I do it is I need
this is
yellow.
one cartridge, guys. This is the size of a pop bottle almost. That's one ink cartridge.
And this printer uses 12 of them.
12.
And they are $70 a piece.
Next time you guys complain about printer ink, 12.
At $70 a piece, yeah. So,
and not to mention, how much was that box of paper for $250? $1,000?
That's $1,000. Oh,
yeah.
Over here. 250 sheets is $2,000. Okay, pop out the yellow cartridge. Push it in. It's out. Yellow goes back in. Close the door. Open the tray.
What a lot of people don't realize is that the difference between an inkjet and a laser printer is completely different.
All right, totally different technologies. When I first started doing Scaledecks, I was working on laser printers, but the toner flakes off, which was interesting. The color just didn't play with the wood as well as the ink does. It spreads up real nice and gets a better consistent color, and you can get these big, huge inkjet printers, whereas big, massive laser printers to handle large sheets of wood like this, they're much harder to come by. Okay, so printer's back happy. It's got that going. This one is still cutting. And if you'll recall, I had that line pretty much perfectly centered there at the margin at the left. If you looked at it, that's pretty darn close to centered, right? The vertical line right to the right of Made in the USA. That's what I homed in, and I wanted that to be pretty close to centered. And that's looking pretty darn good. So again, it's all about getting the wood placed on the tray where you want it to be and getting the tray placed consistently every time. That is the weak link in my system. If there's going to be a failure, the odds are that's where it is. I mean, I have my share of printer failures and other failures, but that's the common one. So now if you look at that in the head, see those little gray dots? See it right there? And if you didn't know they were there, they're not going to be too offensive to you as opposed to the holes, which I think would be more offensive. So
I have looked at the Scaledecks photos and reposted them on the group. Somebody's asked me a question about something, and I'll pull it up and I'll look at it, and I never noticed what those gray dots were until you mentioned it.
They're very subtle. Yeah, it's funny. So these planks are 1/32 of an inch wide. That's about 3/4 of a millimeter, so it's less than a millimeter. I can go down to 3 1/28. I can even go down to 1/64. But when you go down to 1/64, the detail is so fine that the human eye really doesn't pick it up. It just looks like a fuzzy blob. You don't get the distinct lines. So even when I'm doing a 1/350th model, I will do 1/32 inch planks as my base size. Now it comes out to almost exactly 5 inches in scale for the 1/200 Titanic, so it's a perfect size. But if you get one of my other decks for a 1/350th, should be the planks are the same size as my 1/200 Titanic, because this is about as fine as I can go. It's funny with the 3 1/28ths and the 1/64th, it looks terrible to the naked human eye. You put a magnifying glass over it, you know, one of those big lit up.
Yeah.
It looks gorgeous. You see all the plates.
I have one of those at home.
But who wants to always look at their bottle through one of those huge magnifying glasses? You want it to look right.
This is 48 megapixel and it's awesome photograph.
Yeah.
My big motto is, if you want to find your own mistakes, photograph it.
There you go.
And enlarge it.
Okay, now I've been spending my time talking, which I shouldn't have been doing. I should have been prepping this one, so now I got to put the tape on this one. I got to get this tray ready, because I've only got 47 seconds. I think I'm going to waste time here. Just get into a gab fest and I forget I got a job to do here. So we take that, and now we're going to put a little tape guard on down here. 3, 4. Six. So now line up my little circles again. It seems dim. Oh, there it was dim. Let's hit the little power light there, so that circle looks good, and then this circle looks good.
And real quick, let me buzz over that.
And I got it converted. Okay. So I have alignment circles to help me get the wood lined up over where their laser cut's going to go. And so I use these little bullseyes right here. And then I double check to make sure the line goes in the center there and that it's in the margin here. So that's right. So now that the wood's where I want it to be, it doesn't shift around, I start taping it down. Put a little tension on it to try to flatten it out. Okay, so now here we go. Here comes the quick change. You ready?
Yep.
Open up the cutter. This one's done. Like making pizzas, you know?
Or changing machine gun magazines.
A little tray shifter there. That drops in. Home the laser. Repeat the last drop. And go. So if it takes 5 minutes and 50 seconds, 45 seconds to do one of these, and it takes me 15 seconds to do a translution, that's why I say take 6 minutes a deck. And Titanic has 3 of these sheets. I think they're about 6 minutes, and the little one is only 5 minutes. So absolute man-hour, no doubt about it. Just doing that part is just about 20 minutes for each Titanic. That's about as fast as I can crank them through. So it's 3 an hour. So my buddy Torsten in Europe says he wants 50 of them. That's 150 hours doing this.
But didn't you have to do some of the artwork correction or something in the middle of that, or after that?
Well, so I do revisions whenever I do a deck. I always try to make it as historically accurate based on the information that I have available. And one thing about the modeling community, there's a whole lot of people that know more than I do. I know a lot, but there's some pretty sharp people out there. And they'll say, hey, you got this one thing wrong. They know one ship really intimately well. I know a lot about a lot of ships, but there's people that just absolutely locked into a specific ship or class.
I know, and there's people on our group that know how many screws held in a deck light.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and so if they say, hey, I think this is wrong, and I go, do you have any photographic evidence? Anything that shows, you know, that you're right. And they go, well, I got this. This is of the Olympic sister ship. It should be the same on the Titanic.
Wrong.
Wow. Well, I know, but usually it's a good basis, something similar at least, if I got something radically incorrect.
If history has taught us anything, all 3 ships are similarly different.
Right. So, but generally, architectural features, those are going to be close. So let me show you a couple of things now. So now it's getting dark in here. So now I got to go to the task lights. I actually like working when it's dark because it makes my table over there work pretty good. So these are the ones that just came off the printer. These still have the tail on them that I got to take off. So the tail's off on those. And now these are all lined up the same way. Let go. Those are good. And the last step is, these are for my Dresdens. I have that cutter right there waiting for me to package them up. Because I have my Titanic sleeve. And this is the 12-inch wide sheet. And just because I have 6 minutes between sheets, I always do this step. I didn't do it on the very first few batches, but I do it after. Uh-oh.
It's what?
Hit your phone.
It's the what sheet?
There we go. As I trim this little white margin off right here. I don't have to do that. Wouldn't make any difference to you guys. But what it does for me is when I trim those little margins off, and then when I slide this in here, by taking those margins off, it lets me to see this whole label. And there we go. That's why I take the margins off.
What do they call that when when on a commercial you got to show the label? What do they call that?
Product placement kind of stuff,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, so that says right there fits 1/200 Trumpeter kit. So somebody says I got some other weird model that's 1/200, will it work? I don't know. If this fits a Trumpeter.
Hey, so shall we tell them about the new Titanic one that you're doing, the new Trumpeter model kit that's coming out, the great big one?
Yeah. I know about 2 great big ones. The new Trumpeter one, I'm still waiting to see their Scharnhorst and Gneisenau. I'm excited about those.
Where was the other big Titanic one that you had?
That's the Han. I'm also working on the Billings. This is a Han Titanic. This is 1/144. This is a semi-kit with a fiberglass hull, but those of you who are familiar with the pieces, that's that's a pretty darn big piece. So my little bug, my 1/200th Titanic takes 3 sheets. This one takes 7. That's $129. That's $300. So just because the amount of work that's and this is not laser cut at all. This is just printed because it's wood decks, and it's designed that you glue this on top of the plywood or the basswood deck. and then you're going to trim it around the edges with a saw or whatever as you do the work anyway. So it's not like fitting around a molded plastic piece, it's all going on flat wood. So there's that. This has 3 seconds. It's done. Next pizza in the oven. That'll be done in 6 minutes. Meanwhile, over here, take the tape off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That over there. Get back to you in a minute. Back over here. And if you're wondering if it's always this frantic, I would say it's usually more so. I'm definitely distracted by talking, so I'm only doing one thing at a time. Normally I'm doing the same thing with a small cutter doing something else. Like earlier I was cutting the 1/350th end in Dresden.
I'll let you do 2 of them by yourself as you normally would, and then we'll call it a day.
Okay.
And just chit chat.
Yep.
Maybe answer some questions. So
that's this is the second one coming off now.
if you guys got any questions, now's the time to ask.
And just to enlighten what I would normally be doing, so I've got 10 here, I've got 20 envelopes prepared, ready to stuff. Normally I would rush down to the far table and decurl the rest of that bucket of wood. And then I would stack that up in the printer. It's idle right now. It could be printing another 10 sheet ones. And then I'd be cutting the 10 3/4 inch sheet, which I believe is sheet 1. And I'd be taking all those scrap pieces of wood that had bad edges or little pieces, trying to salvage that out to get 20 of the 10 3/4 pieces, and then I'd decurl that and I'd print those. Usually about the time those are done, then I'm done with sheet 1, and so I do the cardstock for sheet 3 as it is, and then I've got that going. I'll do those, I'll cut those 20. Meanwhile, I'm doing the third sheet down there, which is sheet 2. That's 10 inches wide, and then I run it through the printer and then do the cardstock and go. So right now, if I can do 6 minutes of these, it's 10 an hour, so per sheet. And so if I've got 20 to do, 2 hours per sheet, and so 3 sheets would be 6 hours. So right now I look at my watch, and in California it's 5:30. I'll take a break for dinner. If I went straight through and worked past midnight, I could probably have 20 of these up for sale tonight on eBay and Amazon before I go to bed. I will probably do that or come close, but that is not a promise or guarantee or commitment. If I start getting...
And again, I have my donating my time here, so if you need if you need an extra hand putting them in bags or something, I can do that while you're doing something else.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that.
Cutting them down, you show me where to cut, I can cut them down. Just say what, where, and when, and how high.
And away we go.
Anyway, oh here, sorry if I missed this somewhere, but are these self-adhesive? They are not.
Correct. And what you want, do I have one handy?
Andy Tree, yep, that's it, Gorilla Glue.
That is your best stuff right there. Now,
I use that for my woodworking at home.
yes, the key is Gorilla Wood Glue. There's also regular Gorilla Glue, same company, same Gorilla on the label, but that's polyurethane. And when you do polyurethane, great glue, it will never, ever, ever come apart, ever. But polyurethane foams up, and so you got to be ready to dab up all that expanding foam as it's drying. Some modelers swear by it and love it. People who aren't as neat I'm one of those. I like this because it's water soluble. Now what I will do is when I go to apply it, I get one of these little cups, just like that, and I get my brush. I love a synthetic brush, seems to work good. Something like this. I fill it up to, you know, maybe about that much glue in it, about a third of the way up, and then I will take a drinking straw and put like 2 or 3 drops of water against all of that glue. It just thins it out ever so slightly and makes it spread out a little bit cleaner on the back of the deck.
And it keeps it from skinning.
Correct. And then if it's sitting in there, you've been doing it for 20 minutes and it gets that layer on top, again, put about 2 more drops of water in, turn the handle around, stir it up real good, and it'll kind of thin that out, and it'll go right back into the consistency of the glue.
I noticed that too when I was building reclaimed pallet shelves for furniture at home.
Right.
That stuff will skin bigger than...
Yep.
And just a little bit of water.
But I love it. So when I'm working on a styrene model, I have my glue, and I'm working on the plastic deck, I just go... I am not neat at all. I just slobber that glue on everything over all the plastic, and then I put the wood on, and then my other second favorite thing is a dental pick. And a dental pick, then you get around all the little holes. Let me get the Titanic back over here. So there's some tight little spaces. So like in here, you know, the wood might not want to go down in there. It might hung up. We do things extremely tight. We try to get this wood to just be super crazy tight around all the openings. So a dental pick really allows you to press down and get that wood, you know, in all the places, like get it down in there, smooth it out, and then just really hit all those targets and really tack it down. As you do that, a lot of times you'll get that little wad of glue that comes oozing out as you squeeze it down. And again, the dental pick and paper towel, you just take the dental pick and go and you scrape up the extra glue, wipe it off on the paper towel, and press, scrape off what exposes out, and do that the whole way. Now, when I'm sloppy, and like I said, I'm sloppy, there's even a little bit of glue residue right here, but notice it does not stick to the styrene. Actually, I just peeled that up a little bit, but I can go back and reattach more glue. So all my sloppiness, it just comes right off. So if I'm working quick, I can take and get all that extra little glue stuff off. So like, do I have any left on here? Yeah, it looks like I got that pretty clean. Oh, no, there's some, but any glue that's left around the edges, again, the dental pick works really good for getting that sloppy. So for me, I like speed. I like getting this on really quick, and then I'll go back and clean it up. I know other modelers that are extremely meticulous, and they will take their time and constantly keep reapplying the glue only exactly where they want it to go, keep re-moistening it, and then put it down. See, some people say, why don't you use self-adhesive decks? And that's a good question. I can absolutely get my deck material from the mill with a self-adhesive backing. I don't do that, and it's very deliberate. When you have a self-adhesive deck, particularly on a large kit like this, if you're starting in one area, if you get that down here and it's not perfectly lined up, you've got to do something to try to jimmy it, and you get a wrinkle, or you get a tear, or you get some disaster. The beauty of the Gorilla Glue, I put down a deck, it's misaligned here, I can slide it around. I can keep adjusting it, I can stretch it a little bit, I can get it so it goes exactly where I want it to go.
And after it dries, if you still don't like it...
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I would say I have had very, very few customers who have said they prefer adhesive decks. They go, well, it seems weird that I have to glue it down. Once they do it, they never go back. It's just so much easier to work with once you're working with it.
Andy Tree in the UK says he's up late watching, working on the 1/350th stuff of yours.
Okay, what chip?
He doesn't say. I would assume it's a Titanic.
Titanic, yep.
Okay, any other questions, guys? I'm going to let you go do one. I'm going to let this run for another 3 or 4 minutes for one more question, and then we're going to call it.
Okay. One thing that, I don't know if you got a film of that, that's like what I offer. And when you see all the, let me get the big overhead lights on.
Oh my gosh.
So when you see all the work that went into the Titanic and how many hundreds of hours that was, there's all these different ones, and they've all been labors of love to get these to where they are.
What was your most pain in the ass to date?
This Titanic, definitely the biggest pain in the ass to date. Yeah, that one's miserable. I did a custom deck for a 1350th Normandy, SS Normandy, the cruise liner. And at the time, that was the most sophisticated one I'd ever done. Then probably the next one that was a killer was when I moved up into the 1200th and did the 1200th Yamato. That was brutal. The Arizona was worse. The Bismarck was worse than the Arizona. And the Titanic is worse than the Bismarck.
Gene, no problem. Mark Stanton, I can answer that one. If you've never laid down wood decks and you want some chances on laying down some scraps,
Yeah.
let me know. We have a whole big box.
Let me talk to that a little bit, and I can show that. Here, let me pull this one off, and I'll talk about that, what I always like doing. So, get this one running. So, I have tons of these pieces, as you can see, and lots of circles. Those are mostly barbettes from the 1200th Arizona I was working on earlier this weekend. These are from a 1350 Warspite. So I got lots of shapes. But if you look at this sheet, and one thing that's a little bit different about it is I give you a square sheet, I give you a whole frame around it, and so if you look at some of the areas in here, you've got a nice big area there. If you're working with your model railroader, you got a nice planked front porch right out of that. Lots of different scraps, different areas that are available. But if you take a scrap piece, like let's say this little zone in here, that's not useful for anything.
Right.
What I like doing is when I have my model kit, before I build it, when I'm still looking at the whole process, I will take the plastic deck and these little scrap pieces, and I'll try putting them on with Gorilla wood glue. And I said, well, that foamy stuff, that intrigues me. I want to put some of that on. I'll put another scrap. And this is on the underside of the deck. So
somewhere it's not seen.
Exactly. It's going to be invisible. You're doing it on the underside of this piece. But you can experiment and use that whole underside area, and you can try using epoxy. Some people love contact cement. So yeah, your wood glue.
I was going to ask about that.
All your thing, yeah. The contact cement one's really intriguing. What the guy did is he did contact cement, and then he had bamboo skewers along, and then he did contact cement here. Could take all the time that he needed to get the glue exactly where he wanted it. Contact cement on the underside of the wood deck, got everything exactly where he wanted it. And then put the bamboo skewers down and then pulled them out one at a time and just pressed the deck down and then hit it with a little mini roller and bang zoom, he was done.
I helped do a headliner once on an old car, and that was a bit.
So yeah, so contact cement. Let's give you some real golden tips here from some of the modelers that they told me. So I had one guy, he said, when he's got his deck and he's spreading glue around on it, so he's got his paintbrush, and so a couple of things. As he's working on the backside.
Hold on. I dropped the pencil.
Oh. And obviously you trim this out with a sharp knife, X-Acto knife, scalpel, whatever you want to do. And you spread the glue around. He said, as I'm spreading the glue, it's getting on the underside of these little slots. And so it was kind of like getting under there and then this would move around, and then the glue was getting underneath, and I always do it on paper towel as a buffer underneath, but then it's getting little glue stains here. So what I decided to do is I put Scotch tape over all of these to block all the little holes.
Why not put it on wax paper?
Well, see, wax paper, though, you can get the glue goes in there, and then it's between the wood and the wax paper, and if it shifts around, then you go. So Scotch tape makes that nice little watertight seal. So then he lines it up on the model, and as he's dropping it into place, then he peels up the Scotch tape, and then there's no glue that goes anywhere, and so he used that system. So again, that technique of applying these to the underside of the deck to find the glue that you like, find the system that you like. Each modeler has a different preference. I know one guy swears by the polyurethane glue. Great guy. Does beautiful models. It would drive me crazy. I like the wood glue. Other people go, yeah, it doesn't give you enough working time. I hate it. I like contact cement. And some people, give me a 20-minute epoxy every day of the week. I want 20 minutes. I want to slide it around. I want to be real slow and do what I want. Then you do what you want. And that's the beauty of this versus peel and stick. Use the technique that you like. And there's so many that are available. And you can get just amazing results.
Oh, and we have another... that was the chips one. When did you first start making scale decks?
My first Scaledeck product was in September of 2010. So guess what? Next year is my 10-year anniversary, or next month is my 10-year anniversary. How cool is that? So, I don't know. What does everybody think? Should I have a 10-year anniversary sale?
I thought you were around a lot longer than that.
Nope, 10 years. And the kit that inspired it to me to do it was I got the premium edition Academy Graf Spey in 1/350th, a German pocket battleship. And I looked at the wood deck that was with it, and I really didn't like the look. I said, I think I can do better than that. It was early generation. The plank lines were burned in with the laser, so they were brown. I go, I don't want brown lines separating my planks. I want gray lines separating. I want shadows. I don't want chocolate. And so I decided to see if I could come up with something. That's when I was fooling around with the print patterns. Had a friend who had a laser cutter, and we went into that. My first product that I released, my very first product was a 1/350 Borodino. And in fact, that is actually behind you, my first test build of the Borodino, right there. And behind that is a 1/350 Varyag. That was about my third, maybe fourth deck was for the Varyag. So, it's okay. That shows that I am a model builder, right? I'm not...
You're not just a vendor.
I actually make model ships because I like it.
I mean,
I have time.
He's a guy in his garage, but he is a model builder.
There you go.
Let's see. Varying tool. Impressed. Scott, we went over that at the beginning of this, or shortly after the beginning. How long till you have some on eBay or Amazon?
I will say today or tomorrow. So give me some time, let's say within the next 24 hours of this broadcast.
Okay.
They will be up.
We have a private chat that we've got probably 8 or 9 people watching the links, and as soon as they come up, we notify people.
Okay.
There's a bunch of people on the groups that are held up on their models because they're waiting for
this.
So,
I'm going as fast as I can, guys, I swear.
Yeah, I did. Somebody sent me a private message earlier. Did you come up there to help John to help get shit out? No, I came up here because this is my last chance for vacation. Yeah. Okay, 3 or 4 more minutes. I'm going to put the phone up in the holder here and let you guys watch how things are done on 1 or 2 decks, and then I'm going to call it a night if there's no more questions. So, oh no, Scott, don't be, yeah, no big deal. So, I'm going to put this up here, and you guys can watch it get done. I gotta find a place to put this.
Broadcast the world, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, I'm going to run till we get 2 of them done and then call it done. I never did your name.
Audrey.
Audrey. Thank you for letting me pop out.
Oh, you're welcome.
And these get folded backwards?
Oh, no, I got 2 more sheets I got to put in there. Leave them open.
Correct. But you want them here on this stack,
Yeah, once again,
not back here.
Yeah, that's the blank stack. Now, when it comes time to do this, there's kind of a lock, so slide that to the end. And I take the black line, see where the edge of the plastic is? It's got this plastic guard, right?
Yeah.
Then just put the black line right under the plastic. Roll 1, bring it back. Black line on the plastic. About like that. And then it goes in the sleeve with the name up next to the name.
Okay. Have you ever thought about a wider cardstock tape like that we just out where it's easier to slide the whole set in and out, or they get caught on things?
I can do it, and it's actually not caught on the edges, and I like doing this for people who see the back and see what the back looks like and the back thing. I can't do that. My cardstock is in big sheets. I actually cut it to that size. Typically, the reason that this is right here, this is 9.5 inches wide, because the sheets that I have are 19 inches wide, so I just cut it out the middle and it gets to that. So.
As a printer by trade, I know about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So this is the drill, you just keep feeding the hungry coders. So using the 2 trays like I have here is really nice, because otherwise, if it takes me a minute or 2 to mount, if it was 6 minutes and then I take the tray off and then I mount a piece of wood for 2 minutes, it's now 8 minutes per deck, right? Instead of 6. But if this one's ready to go, boom, boom, get right in there because I can do it. But these trays are expensive too. Those are cheap knockoff Chinese trays that were not the right size, and I tried to extend them out and do something terrible. So I had to go to good old made in the USA trays. Like $200 for a tray. Those I think were 2 for $150. But at least that's made to go in that cutter, and then when I adjust to the size, maybe it'll make as much after. Okay. There's that. I'm going to finish my Dresdens finally. I'm going to put the cutting sark back. And this is another thing that I had to do. When I moved in here, I think I've had about 15 different products. That's more than 15 now. And in fact, the labels, I originally did it like this. And the labels were on top. And I had these big hanging tab envelopes. Well, when you do that, you can't put them next to each other because this interferes with the next look over. So that's when I started going to the roll tabs in the middle so I can space them 2 inches apart. And then I went to the vertical labels on the side so I can start overlapping them on the pegboard because my pegboard was just getting out of control.
Okay, what do you need me to do?
Well, now we're just kind of waiting for that one to be done. I'm going to take this one.
How do you know where? Oh, it's
The countdown right there. Yep, and the blue triangle is also a progress indicator. If there's white on it, it's not done. So that blue fills in more and more. When it's all blue, then that disappears and I get the joystick control on it. and when the joystick control appears, then I know it's ready for some more love. It's funny too, the part numbers are relatively new edition. The LCD 77, because it got to the point where I know 1 200 Yamato or 1 500 Yamato, Tamaya Classic Yamato or Tamaya Premium Yamato, and so when my wife or my daughter are backing me up on shipping, they don't really understand all the subtle things and differences. They go, well, it's in Yamato, and shipping. No! So now it's all just a part number. My wife came up with a really good system. We put sticker dots here. This is a green dot, as you can see. Right after we can move down because it's actually behind this one. But when we start getting down, green dot means I have 3 left, 2 left, 1 left. Until we start marking the sheet. So if you look down right now, Scaledecks is a green dot. I don't even mess with the dots on the Titanic. I'm always out of those. Yellow dot on the Bismarck. And if you look in here, getting ready to go, more Bismarcks.
Next to
Scaledecks.
next to the Titanic, what is your next busiest trend?
So, I have sold more of the 1/350th Titanic than any other deck. Because it's been around for maybe 7 years. So it was a pretty early deck, this Scaledecks I thought. Right now, I'm selling the 200 Titanic as fast as I can make it. It'll probably pass the 350 Titanic pretty quick as a more popular deck. The other ones that I sell a lot of are the classic Revell USS Constitution. The 196, the big Revell one. We sold a lot of those. The Petty Sark, sold a lot of those. Nowadays, typical week, it's a lot of 1/200 stuff. It loses its sticky after about 3 or 4 applications. You got classic, you got new. So
Walk me through this.
yeah, so bring this home. Slide that under so the black line lines up at the edge of the plastic. Right there, black line. Yep. Roll it. Just like that. All right. Hey, you're working off that gas, right?
Yeah. You know how many times I've gotten asked for that?
No, that's fine. Pull the scrap on it, you're fine. Now, if you got aggressive and cut into the laser talk, then you got to talk. You owe me full money.
Okay, so what's the trick of getting these in?
So, plain pattern up. And name next to name. There you go.
I'm just always afraid it's going to fall. then you want it upside down or right side up?
Right side up over here is fine. And I'll flip them over when I gotta start sealing them up. So now, back over here.
I'm going to check and see if there's more questions.
Okay.
Okay, guys, there it is. We'll have some hopefully this weekend. Don, thank you so much.
You bet.